Welcome back to the channel. Dear friends, they say women are flowers, but when the storm hits, they must become the strongest cacti. In today's episode, I will tell you a completely different story. It's no longer about helpless tears, but a breathtaking confrontation between self-respect and cruelty. The Highland night rain poured relentlessly, lightning streaks cutting across the deep purple sky, illuminating Li Tu-Huen's pale, terrified face. She clutched her few-month-old infant tightly, trying to shield the baby from the freezing rain seeping through the gaps in the wattle door. Inside the house that was once a home, there was now only the pungent smell of alcohol and the presence of a strange woman with piercing, cold eyes. Tuan, her husband, staggered toward her. He was no longer the gentle man of 2 years ago. Alcohol had turned him into a monster. He glared at Wen, then at the baby crying hysterically from hunger, but showed absolutely no pity. "What are you still standing there for? Get out! I've already thrown all your things outside," Tuan roared, his voice hoarse and thick. Wen sobbed, "Tuan, it's a stormy night. The baby is so small. Please let us stay in the corner of the kitchen. I'll leave tomorrow morning." But her plea was met with a brutal shove. The other woman sneered, her voice dripping with irony. "Didn't you hear him? Tuan said there's no room for strangers in this house." The height of cruelty came when Tuan spotted the old electric fan, the only keepsake Wen's mother had given her when she got married. He kicked it, shattering the plastic casing with a dry crack that echoed with the thunder. He even snatched away the small cloth bag containing the meager coins Huyen had painstakingly saved through her embroidery. Huyen realized that the love was dead. She silently gathered a few chipped bowls, a dented pot, and a worn-out mat, things they considered trash. Stepping out the door, mud clung to her feet, and rain lashed at her face. But her heart was colder than the weather. She wandered through the darkness, knocking on familiar doors only to be met with rejections. "My house is too crowded. I have too many children." The refusals were like knives cutting into the young mother's heart. Finally, Huyen spotted an abandoned logger's hut in the distance toward the tea hills. She decided to carry her child there, lighting a small fire from the remaining dry wood. Watching her baby sleep soundly in her arms, Huyen's eyes suddenly became unusually determined. She whispered softly, "We will survive, my child. I will never let anyone trample on us again." The dawn broke behind the mountains, but it brought no warmth, only the biting chill of the highland frost. In the abandoned hut, Huyen woke up with shoulders aching after a night of sitting against the wall to give the driest spot to her baby. She looked at the old basket she had found and repaired with sturdy forest vines. This would be the cradle accompanying them on the journey ahead. Huyen carried her child deep into the vast tea hills. There she met the plantation owner, a man with a rugged and stern face. Huyen earnestly pleaded for a job, no matter how arduous. The owner looked at the infant wrapped in an old cloth, frowning slightly. "Working here has no room for weakness. You must meet the quota to get paid. No one will give you priority just because you have a small child." Huyen nodded, her eyes flashing with determination. Strapping the baby to her back, she began working under the early sun's growing heat. The young green tea buds required skill, but Huyen's hands, already roughened by the elements, stung with pain from the continuous labor. Every tea bud picked sent a jolt of pain through the blisters on her hands. Sweat rolled down her forehead, onto her cheeks, and soaked into the clothing of the baby sleeping soundly on her back. In the middle of the shift, the baby woke up and cried hysterically from hunger. Huyen had to stop, sitting down at the base of a tea bush, and took out the pack of milk bought with her last coins to soothe the child. In that moment, she caught sight of a man watching her from a distance. It was Officer Van. He did not appear in his majestic uniform, but wore the simple clothes of a local, silently patrolling the area. Seeing the young mother working while caring for her child, his heart tightened with empathy. He did not approach immediately, but quietly noted the location of the hut where they were staying.
At the end of the day, as the sun dipped behind the ridges, Huyen took the harvested tea to be weighed. Her hands were bleeding from the tea resin and scratches from the branches. The owner, though strict, saw those hands in the overflowing basket. He silently handed her a few extra coins and a small bag of crackers. "Take this for the baby's milk," he said curtly, and turned away. Holding her first wages, Huyen was on the verge of tears. She knew this journey was only beginning, but she had finally seen a glimmer of light. As time passed, the blisters on Huyen's hands gradually hardened into calluses, just as her heart grew stronger with each passing day. Every morning, she woke up before the rooster even crowed, lighting a fire to cook a quick bowl of plain porridge before carrying her child up the hill. The old basket was now filled with fresh green tea buds, the fruit of her sweat and the salty tears of a single mother. However, peace was a luxury. Rumors of Huyen working at the tea hill and earning an income reached Tuan's ears. Driven by debts from his drinking habits and pressure from his new wife, Tuan tracked her down with a dark intention. He didn't come to visit his child. He came to rob what Huyen had just built. That afternoon, as the sun began to hide behind the bamboo groves, Tuan appeared looking disheveled, the smell of alcohol reeking from every breath. He blocked Huyen's path as she was heading to weigh her tea. "Give me the money. I know you just got paid," Tuan growled, his hands trembling with withdrawal as he reached out to grab the small pouch at Huyen's side. Huyen stepped back, one hand firmly holding the baby sleeping on her back, the other in a defensive stance. "This is for the baby's milk. You have no right to touch it." Tuan's new wife also stepped out from the bushes, hurling insults. "You bitch! You stole things from our house to sell, and now you're acting tough? Give it here, or I'll show you what a beating feels like." The tension reached its peak when Tuan lunged forward to grab the basket. The baby, startled, began to scream in the silence of the tea hill. Right then, a sharp, commanding voice rang out. "Stop right there!" Officer Van appeared from behind an ancient tree. This time, he was not in civilian clothes, but in his majestic uniform. He had been monitoring Tuan's behavior for a long time and understood the nature of the situation. The presence of the law made Tuan freeze, his bloodshot eyes showing a flicker of fear. Officer Van looked Tuan straight in the eye. "Robbery and violence against women are illegal. If you take one more step, I will take you to the station immediately." In contrast to their previous aggression, Tuan and his new wife began muttering curses and slunk away into the darkness. Huyen stood there, her breath coming in gasps, tears rolling down her face, not from fear, but because she knew that from now on, she had a protector. Officer Van walked over, his gaze softening as he took a small packet of candy from his pocket for the baby. "Miss Huyen, don't be afraid. Justice is always on the side of the honest. Tomorrow I will help you with residency procedures and find a safer place to live." Huyen watched Officer Van's silhouette fade into the distance, her heart feeling unexpectedly warm.
On the wind-swept tea hill, she realized she was no longer alone in this fight. With Officer Van's help, Huyen no longer had to stay in the dilapidated hut. He assisted her in renting a small, long-vacant room belonging to a blacksmith family at the edge of the hill. The house was simple, with earthen walls and a thatched roof, but to Huyen, it was a kingdom of freedom.
At night, instead of the drunken shouts of her husband, there was only the chirping of insects and the sweet lullabies she sang to her child. She began to bond with the other tea-picking women. Each had their own story. Some were widowed, others were outcasts, and together they formed an alliance of kindred spirits. They shared rice balls and took turns watching each other's children to meet the weighing deadline. Huyen learned the art of manual tea making, how to pick the finest one bud, two leaves tips. The hands that were once blistered were now calloused, strong, and skillful. Officer Van visited often, sometimes bringing milk for the baby, or helping Huyen fix a sagging wooden door. His silent care was like a fire warming her once frozen heart. However, Huyen kept a certain distance. She understood that before learning to accept love from another, she had to learn to love herself and firmly protect her child. That year, the tea flowers bloomed white across the hills. Huyen had become one of the best tea harvesters in the region. One late afternoon, as the mist began to settle, Tuan suddenly appeared at the top of the slope. He looked old, ragged, and haggard after being abandoned by his second wife and consumed by debt. He saw Huyen, now beautiful, radiant, and confident, holding their healthy, handsome child. Tuan started to approach, his lips trembling as if to apologize or beg for help. But from behind, Officer Van stepped forward, placing a steady hand on Huyen's shoulder, not as an officer of the law, but as a companion.
Tuan froze. He saw the unbridgeable gap between his life and Huyen's new world.
He silently turned away, disappearing into the gray mist, much like his own future. Huyen did not look back. She fixed her eyes on the hilltop, where the sun radiated its most brilliant final rays of the day. Officer Van asked softly, "Do you regret anything that is past?" Huyen smiled, a peaceful smile she had lost long ago. She didn't answer directly, but simply held her child's hand tighter, walking toward her home. The ending leaves a lingering question. Will Huyen open her heart to Officer Van, or will she choose to continue her solitary but proud journey? One thing is certain, no matter what lies ahead, that woman is no longer afraid of the storm.
Thank you so much for watching today's video until the very end. Your presence is the greatest gift to me. Every view and every moment you spend here is a huge motivation for me to keep improving and releasing higher quality content in the future. Creating content isn't easy, but your silent support gives me the strength to stay creative every day. If you found today's video interesting and relaxing, please don't hesitate to give me a like. Your small actions are the most precious recognition of our team's hard work. And especially if you are new to the channel, please hit